The wind howled like a warning. Jack Rourke stood in the middle of his cabin, half listening to the sound of pine branches scraping the metal roof. Another storm was rolling in, and it was coming hard. He glanced at the wood stove, burning steady, and poured himself a second cup of black coffee, the kind that scorched your tongue and kept your demons quiet. The calendar pinned above the sink read November 18th, but dates didn't mean much out here. The seasons spoke louder than clocks, and winter, unforgiving as ever, had arrived early in the Montana mountains. Jack had lived alone in this place for over 3 years now. No neighbors, no mail, no internet, just trees, snowfall, and memories he tried not to remember. That was the point. He was halfway through his second sip when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong. Not the storm, not the trees, something closer. A faint scratching, deliberate, hesitant. It came again. Fritch, fritch, fritch. The front door. Jack set down the mug and reached under the counter, fingers brushing against the cold metal of his shotgun. He didn't pick it up, not yet. The cabin's porch light had gone out months ago. He kept forgetting to replace it. Or maybe he didn't want to. Darkness was a kind of armor. He stepped closer to the door. More scratching, followed by a soft, tremulous whimper. Not human. He opened the door. The icy wind punched through the entry like a thief. Snow whipped inside in slanting sheets. And standing there, utterly still in the swirling storm, was a German shepherd. She wasn't barking, wasn't moving, just standing with her legs locked and head tilted slightly down. Her fur was coated in snow and ice. Her ribs showed beneath a dull, mud-smeared coat. But her eyes, those amber eyes, locked onto Jack's with a focus that felt human. She was shaking. Not from cold. Fear. Jack opened the door wider. That's when he saw them. 2 small puppies, barely old enough to walk, huddled against the shepherd's hind legs, shivering violently. One was white with black specks, the other solid brown. Both looked half-starved. The shepherd took a slow, cautious step forward, but not into the cabin. Instead, she positioned herself fully between Jack and the pups, tail stiff, eyes never blinking. A protector. "Where the hell did you come from?" Jack muttered. He crouched slowly, making himself smaller. The dog didn't flinch, but she didn't relax either. That's when he noticed the strange glint at her neck. A melted, twisted piece of metal, hanging from what used to be a collar. Jack reached for it gently, but she growled low. Protective. Not aggressive. He backed off. Easy. Not trying to take it, he said. Behind her, the pups whimpered louder. One tried to climb onto the other for warmth, and immediately fell into the snow. That's what did it. Jack muttered a curse under his breath, and opened the door wider. Fine. Come in. But just until the storm passes. The shepherd didn't move. For a heartbeat, Jack wondered if she understood English. And then, without a sound, she stepped forward, nudging one pup with her snout and using her flank to herd the other. Only once both pups were safely inside did she follow, her head brushing Jack's hand as she passed. She didn't look back. Jack shut the door. The wind battered against it like a thing scorned. Inside, the cabin fell quiet again. Just the hiss of the fire and the small sounds of the pups sniffling around the rug, exploring with cautious curiosity. Jack watched the shepherd circle them, then lie down beside them. One pup curled against her chest. The other crawled under her neck. She exhaled deeply, a sound of guarded relief. Jack grabbed an old towel from a drawer and gently approached. "You're lucky I'm not the man I used to be," he muttered. She let him dry the pups without protest, even allowed him to pat down her soaked coat. But when he got close to her collar again, her lip curled, just slightly. Not a threat. A reminder. He backed off. When they were dry, Jack brought over an old bowl and poured what was left of his stew into it. The shepherd nudged it toward the pups before taking any herself. Jack knelt by the stove, watching all of this with the kind of stillness that comes from people who have seen too much. It didn't add up. Shepherds didn't roam this deep into the mountains. Not with two pups. Not like this. And that tag that wasn't right. No markings he could recognize. Just a strange symbol, half melted into warped steel. Like it had been through fire. He turned away from the stove, glanced toward the window, and froze. Eyes. Someone, or something, was watching from the treeline. A pair of faint, glassy reflections just beyond the tree line. Low. Human height. The shepherd saw it too. Her ears perked. She stood, not a sound, placing herself between the window and the pups again. Her growl returned, deeper now. Jack rose quietly and stepped toward the shotgun under the counter. But when he turned back, the eyes were gone. No movement. No footprints. Just snow swirling in the wind and shadows dancing in the pines. Jack's grip tightened on the weapon. He didn't know who she was, or what had brought her here. But the look in her eyes, the way she froze on that porch like a soldier waiting for orders, it told him something clear as day. This dog wasn't running from danger. She was running toward safety. And she had chosen his door to freeze in front of. By morning, the storm had thickened into a whiteout. Snow blanketed the forest like a shroud, hiding every trace of the night before. Jack Rourke sat at the wooden table, staring at the twisted metal tag he'd finally managed to remove from the German shepherd's neck. It lay in the center of the table like a relic pulled from a crash site. Half melted, blackened, and wrong. No name. No serial number. Just a strange symbol, partially warped, two overlapping triangles inside a circle, almost military in design, but not any military Jack had ever served with. The dog lay quietly by the fire. Her pups were curled against her side, sleeping with twitching paws and small, huffing breaths. She hadn't taken her eyes off Jack since he removed the tag. Not once. "You're not just someone's stray," he muttered. She blinked once. Not confirmation, not denial. Just waiting. Jack leaned back in the chair and picked up his satellite phone. It hadn't been used in months. He dialed a number he hadn't called in years. 3 rings. Then a woman's voice answered. "Ellie's clinic." "Still answering your own phones, Doc?" A pause. Then soft laughter. "Jack? Holy hell, I figured you fell off the edge of the world." "Not far from it," he said. "I need a favor." Ellie Clarkson was a veterinary surgeon. More than that, she was the only person Jack trusted with things that didn't make sense. And this dog? She was one big walking question mark. By late afternoon, Ellie's battered Jeep pulled up the winding trail to Jack's cabin. She stepped out in insulated boots and a green parka, blonde hair tucked under a knit cap, and her eyes already suspicious. "You called me out here for a dog?" Jack held the door open. Not just any dog. When Ellie stepped inside and saw the shepherd curled protectively around 2 sleeping pups, she softened. "Well, hello, Mama," she whispered. "She's not their mother," Jack said. Ellie looked back, confused. "They don't match. She's protecting them, but they're not hers." Ellie knelt and inspected the pups gently. "They're both underfed, dehydrated, but no signs of long-term neglect." "You're right. They're not related." Her brow furrowed. "And this one," she touched the brown pup's neck. "There's a scar. Surgical. Microchip incision, but no chip inside." Jack handed her the melted tag. She turned it in her fingers, then paused. "What is this?" "I was hoping you'd tell me." "I've seen tags like this," she said slowly. "But not from pet registries. Government-issued canine programs. Classified stuff. Back when I was in D.C., I got pulled into a consultation for a trauma dog unit, Project Sentinel. High-end behavioral programming. They never told me what the dogs were actually trained for." Jack's jaw clenched. The name rang a bell. A sour one. "You said programming. Not training." Ellie nodded. They were conditioning dogs like machines. No room for natural instinct. But something went wrong with one of their prototypes, one that refused a kill command. Bid her own handler to protect a kid in the testing zone. That's when I walked away. Jack exhaled sharply. "And you think this is one of those dogs?" Ellie turned to the shepherd. Look at her posture. That's not stray behavior. That's tactical. She places herself between the threat and her target. Even asleep. As if on cue, the shepherd stirred and placed a paw protectively over the closest pup. Jack rubbed his eyes. They weren't lost in the storm. They were running from something. Ellie's voice dropped to a whisper. Or someone. Jack moved to his bookshelf, pulling out an old metal box. From it, he retrieved a small portable scanner, standard issue in his old line of work. He waved it gently over the shepherd's back. The scanner beeped. Microchip found, Jack said. Encrypted. Ellie leaned in. You can't decode that without a military-grade decryptor. Jack opened a drawer. Lucky I used to own one. He plugged the scanner into a dusty laptop, powered it up, and waited. The software kicked into life, screen flickering with rapid code until it resolved into a simple string of data. K9-07. Handler, Dr. Lena Voss. Program, Sentinel_17. Status, terminated. Terminated. Jack felt the word like a weight in his chest. Ellie backed away. They shut her down. No, Jack said. She survived. Then she ran. Jack turned to the shepherd, who watched him in absolute silence. Why would a military project dog be on my porch, dragging 2 pups through a snowstorm? Ellie's voice was grim. Because she had nowhere left to go. Suddenly, the laptop beeped again. A folder autoloaded from the scanner's memory. One single video file. Jack double-clicked. The video opened in grainy black and white. A woman screaming inside a facility, lights flashing red in the background. She wore a lab coat, her face bloodied. You have to get them out. You don't understand. They're executing every subject tied to Sentinel. The dogs, they remember. They remember. Behind her, sparks flew from a control panel. A man in a black uniform grabbed her by the collar. The screen cut to static. Ellie stared, hand over her mouth. That was Voss. Jack nodded slowly. She was the shepherd's handler. He looked toward the fireplace. The shepherd hadn't moved, but her ears were perked, eyes locked on the screen. She knows, Jack whispered. She remembers everything. And then, outside, a distant rumble. Ellie moved to the window. Do you hear that? Jack was already there. Tires. Slow. Careful. Deliberate. A black SUV crept up the tree line, lights off. Windows tinted. No plates. The shepherd rose from her resting position. No growl. No bark. Just silence. Her entire body tense as iron wire. Jack moved to the cabinet, retrieving his shotgun. He turned to Ellie. Get in the back room. Now. She hesitated. Jack. Go. Outside, the SUV stopped. The engine cut. And then, nothing. The silence dragged, taut and unnatural. Jack glanced back at the shepherd. She stood between him and the pups again. Her head lowered. Her eyes locked on the door. She wasn't protecting herself. She was ready to fight. The knock never came. Jack stood at the door for 20 minutes, shotgun steady, ears tuned to every gust of wind. The black SUV didn't move. No doors opened. No footsteps approached. Then, as silently as it had arrived, it reversed, taillights flickering briefly, and vanished back into the woods. Jack didn't lower the weapon until the vehicle was swallowed by snow. Behind him, the shepherd hadn't moved. Her body remained square between Jack and the pups, the intensity in her eyes undimmed. Ellie stepped out from the back room. They were watching. Testing your response. They weren't here for me, Jack said, voice low. They were here for her. That night, sleep did not come. Jack sat by the fireplace, the pups curled near his feet now, trusting him more with every hour. But their protector, K9-07, had returned to her sentinel posture. Awake. Listening. Always between them and the door. He stared at the tag again, that charred medallion of secret. His fingers brushed it as though it might whisper the truth if warmed. In the morning, the snow had softened to a heavy hush. Jack turned to Ellie. We need to find the place that tag came from. Ellie hesitated. You think there's something left? If there's a chance of answers, I'm taking it. Ellie nodded, grabbing her keys. They left the pups with enough food and locked the cabin. The shepherd jumped into the back seat without being asked, her eyes scanning the treeline as if she already knew where they were headed. An hour into the drive, the trees gave way to a fenced ruin deep in the national forest. The ground was scorched, the perimeter blackened with soot and snow. A crumbling, half-collapsed metal sign lay on its side near the road. Rosevale Behavioral Research Unit. Authorized personnel only. Ellie killed the engine. No one ever mentioned this place, she whispered. They were never supposed to, Jack replied. They climbed over the collapsed section of fence. The wind here was eerily still, as though the forest were holding its breath. The facility had burned from the inside out. Smashed windows, burst pipes frozen in jagged spirals, collapsed ceilings. Jack's boots crunched over broken tile and ash. The shepherd led the way. Not sniffing. Knowing. They passed corridors marked K-Unit and Conditioning Sector. On one charred wall, faded beneath smoke stains, was the phrase, "Instinct replaced by obedience." Ellie shuddered. This wasn't about training dogs. This was about overriding them. They reached a shattered steel door. A cold lab lay beyond it. Half of it collapsed, but the center table remained intact. Jack cleared the rubble to reveal a row of cages, small and sterile. Each was labeled. Most bore red stamps across the nameplates. Subject deceased. Subject terminated. Subject unstable. Only one was left open and unmarked. K9-07. She escaped from here, Ellie murmured. But how did she survive the fire? She was never supposed to. Jack opened a scorched locker near the cages. Inside, a warped clipboard and a weatherproof container. Inside the container was a portable hard drive, miraculously intact. He turned to Ellie. We're taking this. A low growl echoed down the hallway. Jack froze. The shepherd's fur bristled. Her body angled to shield them again. Then a clatter. Footstep. Human. Fast. Jack grabbed Ellie and ducked behind an overturned desk. A figure stepped into view, military build, dark winter gear, rifle ready. Another followed. Then a third. No signs of her, one said. She's not going far. Alpha wants confirmation she didn't pass on the behavior defect to the litters. Ellie's breath caught. Jack put a finger to his lips. Check the mainframe room. If the backup log survived the fire, we can delete any trail. No one outside the program knows what happened here. The shepherd was gone. She had moved like a ghost, vanished from behind them. Jack risked a glance. She reappeared behind the last man. No sound. Just blur. Then motion. The man dropped with a grunt, his weapon falling beside him. The other two turned just in time to see her lunging, jaws clamping around the second man's wrist. Gunfire erupted. Jack grabbed Ellie and ran. The third man followed, shouting. She's in the open. They crashed through a rear door and into the tree line. Ellie tripped hard. Jack spun, hauled her to her feet. Gunfire rang out again, until suddenly it stopped. Dead quiet. Then, panting, the shepherd emerged from the trees, blood on her muzzle, one ear torn. But she was alive. And she'd done it. Back at the cabin, Jack locked every window. Ellie bandaged the shepherd's ear, working silently while Jack connected the salvaged hard drive to his laptop. Files bloomed across the screen. Dozens of reports. Footage. Records of Sentinel protocols, field testing, neurological alterations. One file stopped him cold. A recorded debrief labeled Incident 5A Civilian Compromise. He clicked play. The video showed Jack, 5 years younger, at a disaster site. He remembered the day well. He'd been told a child was missing in a collapsed building. He'd deployed a rescue dog without knowing the dog was part of Sentinel. The child died. So did 2 civilians. Jack had carried the blame ever since. But in the video, the handler barked orders into a calm, override instinct. Prioritize mission objective. Ignore non-mission targets. And the dog stopped just feet from the child's body. Jack's hands shook. They'd used him as a field test. A cover. They never told me, he whispered. Ellie looked up, eyes wet. They let you take the fall. And they buried the truth. Jack turned to the shepherd. She had disobeyed those same orders. Saved 2 lives. Found him. Not by accident. By choice. She remembered him. That night, as snow drifted silently outside, Jack watched the pups sleep. The shepherd sat beside him now, not guarding, but resting. For the first time. You found me, Jack said quietly. You remembered who I was. She blinked slowly. But before the moment settled, headlights cut through the window. Not from the trail. From the hill above. Jack stood. Ellie backed away from the light. Jack, there shouldn't be a road up there. The shepherd stood slowly. The door rattled once. Then again. Then came a low, grinding voice from outside. You have something that belongs to us. Jack reached for the shotgun. The shepherd stepped ahead of him, not frozen this time. Ready. The wind fell still, but the air thickened with tension. Jack Rourke stood in front of his cabin door, shotgun raised, heart thudding like a war drum. The voice outside had been flat and mechanical, not quite human, as if shaped more by programming than intent. Ellie crouched low by the fireplace, clutching the 2 pups close. They whimpered quietly, sensing the unease pulsing through the room. The German shepherd, K9-07, stood like stone. Not barking. Not growling. She stared at the door as though she had seen this moment before. Perhaps she had. Another knock. Firmer. Deliberate. You have something that belongs to us, the voice repeated. Jack moved to the window and carefully peeled back the edge of the curtain. 3 figures stood outside in the snow. Not uniforms. Black coats, face masks, reflective visors. Government? Mercenaries? Worse, ghosts from a project that should have died with that burning lab. The shepherd stepped forward and leaned against the door. Not pushing. Not guarding. Waiting. Jack exhaled slowly. She's not going with them. He looked to Ellie. Get the pups into the crawl space. Stay low. Ellie hesitated. Jack. Now. She scooped the pups into her arms and vanished into the hallway. Jack turned back toward the shepherd. You don't have to do this. She looked up at him. No sound. No movement. But in her stillness was a language more powerful than words. She wasn't here to be saved. She came to end something. The door handle twitched. Jack didn't wait. He flung the door open. The storm hit like a slap, snow swirling in sheets. The men outside didn't flinch. The tallest one stepped forward, his voice crackling through the mask. K9-07. Stand down. Return to handlers. The shepherd didn't move. Your obedience protocols remain intact. Reintegration is non-negotiable. Jack stepped between them, shotgun aimed directly at the speaker's chest. She's not going anywhere. You don't understand what she is, the voice said coldly. No, Jack snapped, you don't. The man raised his hand in warning, but it was already too late. The shepherd moved. Not a charge. A blur of fluid motion. No warning bark, no wasted breath. She shot forward and launched herself into the nearest figure's chest, sending him sprawling backward into the snow. Jack fired once. The sound thundered through the trees, and the second man dropped to a knee, screaming. The third tried to reach for a weapon, but she was already on him. Teeth to neck. A scream. Then silence. Jack ran forward, yanking the second man's weapon away. The tall one, the speaker, stood alone now, backing away through the snow. You've ruined everything, he hissed. Do you even know what she is? Jack didn't lower the gun. I know she's better than whoever made you. She's a design flaw, the man barked. She disobeys. She chooses emotion over instruction. That's not loyalty, it's contamination. Jack gritted his teeth. That flaw saved 2 lives and uncovered your buried sins. She's a product of war. Jack lowered the gun slightly. Maybe. But she found peace in a snowstorm. Tell me, how human does that sound? The man lunged, but he didn't get far. The shepherd hit him mid-step, tackling him to the ground. She didn't kill him. Not immediately. She pinned him with a snarl that spoke of vengeance held in check. Jack approached slowly. The man's visor had cracked. Behind it, eyes filled with fury and fear. "I'll come back," he gasped. "You can't stop the program. She's not the only one." Jack knelt beside him. "Maybe not," he said softly. "But she's the first to fight back." The shepherd looked up at Jack, waiting for permission. He shook his head. "No. Let him crawl back and tell them what happened. Let him be the message." She stepped back. The man scrambled away, limping, disappearing into the trees. Jack turned to the shepherd. "It's over." But it wasn't. Not quite. 3 days later, snow still coated the ground, but now it sparkled instead of threatened. The story had broken. Ellie had sent the hard drive to a contact in the press, a former military whistleblower turned investigative reporter. Within 48 hours, Project Sentinel was all over the news. Debates erupted across television screens. Congressional hearings were announced. Public outrage ignited. Jack watched it all from the porch of his cabin, a hot mug in one hand and the shepherd lying at his side, one ear still bandaged but eyes calm for the first time. The pups tumbled around the yard, clumsy and playful in the snow. Free. Finally free. Ellie stepped onto the porch and handed him an envelope. "You've been offered a job." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Training rescue dogs for veterans. Real ones. No labs. No experiments." He looked at the shepherd. "What do you think?" She blinked, then laid her head on his boot. Jack chuckled. "That's a yes." Ellie smiled. Jack looked out toward the woods. "You know, I think she came here because she remembered me." Ellie nodded. "And because she knew you'd open the door." Jack looked down at her again, this creature forged in darkness, who had chosen to defy her code, save the weak, and find her way home through miles of frozen silence. He opened the cabin door. "Come on," he said. "Let's go home." She rose, Pups bounding behind her, and followed him inside. This time, the door closed on peace. And it stayed that way.